Everything that is going to happen in Afghanistan is going to be recorded on these phones. And they'll be sent out. And they'll be broadcast all over the world. And you're going to face a public relations disaster if you make mistakes. So this is my warning to you. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, I want you to tell me whether this is possible in KPK and Afghanistan. Hear it, eh? And then tell me, ye mumkin hai ya nahi? Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam had a young wife whose name was Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And husband and wife used to run races. And sometimes he would beat her. I mean, he's in good shape, huh? He could beat her. And sometimes she would beat him. So, did they run the races inside the bedroom? Huh? But no. They were running the races outside. Can you do that today in KPK? Can you do that today in Afghanistan? Bataya! Can you do it today? No. This is Islam that the world should see. That is not Islam. The Prophet said, prepare yourself for this one, eh? This is Sahih Muslim. He said, when woman makes sajda, meaning in the masjid, not in their homes. When women make sajda, they must remain in sajda longer than the men. Did you ever hear this? Kabhi suna aapne? Never. They never heard it. They must remain in sajda longer than the men. Why? Because some of the men might not have enough cloth to cover themselves properly. And if a woman were to raise her head too quickly, it would be an unwelcome sight. So what? Were they naked? What kind of clothes did the men wear? And women were in the masjid? Did the Prophet ﷺ allow women to pray in the masjid? I can't hear you. I don't. You had dinner already, no? Did Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, did he allow women to pray in the masjid, yes or no? Yes. This is Islam. This is Islam, where women had rights to pray in the masjid. Do women come to the masjid for Salatul Jummah in Pakistan? No. I lived in Malaysia for many years as well. I never saw a woman in the masjid in Malaysia. No. So this is going to be Islam on display. Is this a valid Khilafah state or is it a bogus Khilafah state? Where women are not allowed in the masjid. He said when the women, oh no, the clothing now for the men is that you have two pieces of clothing as a man. Two pieces. The lower portion has to be tailored in such a way You could jump on a donkey. You could ride a horse. You could ride a camel. So it's like this shalwar. Perfect shalwar. And it has to be baggy. If it's tight and you go on the horse, it'll tear. So you have the perfect shalwar here. But in addition to the lower garment, you have to have an upper garment. And the upper garment has to be long enough that when you go down in sajda, you will not present an indecent spectacle to those behind you. Because if you do that, not because of a shortage of cloth, but because you want to follow the West, then I have a surprise for you. Allah will take your salat and throw it back in your face. If you perform salat with clothing, that when you go down in sajda, you present an indecent spectacle. So now then, he said, when the men come to the masjid, the best row for the men is the first. And the most dangerous is the last. Is it because of scorpions? What is there making it dangerous? And the best row for the woman is the last. And the most dangerous is the first. Is it because of scorpions? No. Huh? No. You know the answer. As the row of the men at the front fills up, and the row of the women from the back fills up, the two will come close to each other. Thank Allah that He did not put the woman in the front and men in the back, because no man will be able to concentrate on his salat. None. That's elementary common sense, okay? So thank Allah He put the woman in the back, so the men are in front, so the men could concentrate on Allah. But then, did they have a shortage of cloth that they couldn't put a parda? Or they could put palm leaves and make a barrier? No. The masjid was arranged in this way by Allah Himself. He informed the Prophet that men and women in Islam prayed in the same space. Men and women prayed in Islam in the same space, with no barrier in between, no parda in between. That is why the last row was dangerous for the men, and the first row for the women was dangerous. Huh? Particularly when you're young. Even when you're old it's difficult, but when you're young, the hormones are raging, you see? And so, this is Islam. Do you know anywhere in the world today where men and women pray together in the same space? Have you ever seen it? Huh? Have you ever seen it anywhere? Well, wait. When Imam al-Mahdi comes and the Khilafah state is restored, whether you like it or you don't, men and women will pray the way they prayed in Medina. This is Islam. Can this ever come to Afghanistan? All I am doing is sending a message. I don't know whether it will reach them or not. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is coming back to Medina and he's riding a camel. And the sun is very hot. And there is this woman walking on the road. So he stopped his camel and he offered her a ride. If she accepts it, she'll be sitting behind him on the camel. If she's unbalanced, she'll have to hold his back. She said, I long to accept the invitation, but my husband is a jealous man, so I had to decline. So my question is, can you do that in KPK? Can you do that in Afghanistan? Huh? Can you stop your horse or your camel and give a woman a ride? She's a stranger. This is Islam. This is Islam. So will this be a valid Khilafah state or a bogus Khilafah state? Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam went to the home of a companion, and while he was there, he felt lice in his head. In those days, you know, the men had more hair. I'm trying to grow mine a little bit now. In KPK, I see men like the Prophet used to have long hair. You know what she did? The wife of the companion, she put him to sit down. And in the presence of her husband, she went with her fingers searching in his hair to take out the lice. Can you do this in KPK? Can you do this in Afghanistan? No. This is Islam. This is Islam. So will this be a valid Khilafah state or a bogus Khilafah state? I've taken a lot of your time today, I know it. But I've not exhausted the subject. What I have done is to show, number one, that our sons in Afghanistan, our brothers in Afghanistan, have delivered to the world a spectacular demonstration of evidence that Islam is not in a museum. It is not a spent force. That Islam is not only still alive, but it has the capacity to resist the most powerful civilization in the world, and that's bad news for Israel. What I've done today is to show compelling evidence that modern Western civilization is in decline, that Pax Americana is in decline. I showed you evidence from Venezuela, I showed you Crimea, I showed you Syria, and then I went to Afghanistan. I then turned to say to you that what is happening in Afghanistan is validating the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, that a Muslim army is destined to come out of Afghanistan, of Khorasan, and no one will be able to stop it until it reaches Jerusalem. I then went on to tell you about my own relationship with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan 25 years ago when I was in New York. And I was specializing in Islam and international relations. After that I went to eschatology, and since then it had been eschatology, but at that time it was Islam and international relations. And how the Islamic Emirate in Afghanistan differed with me on two very important issues pertaining to how should a Khilafah state function. Number one was membership in the United Nations, and hence membership in the International Monetary Fund, and therefore membership in the, you remember, World Health Organization, virus, vaccine. Huh? Every order they give, you got to obey. You know, if governments were to vanish, there'd be no virus. And there'd be no vaccine. It's only because of governments. It's only because of governments that the virus exists and the vaccine exists, really. And of course, there is the possibility that they are manufacturing in laboratories, and therefore they can bring out more and more dangerous viruses. I then went on to point out how the Darul Ulum at that time could not produce the scholarship to guide Kabul properly, and Kabul made mistakes. And we don't know whether in 25 years the Darul Ulum has been able to produce better scholars in Afghanistan. That is a different thinking now, that the scholarship now that was not there 25 years ago. And then we ended by pointing out that without that scholarship you cannot establish a Khilafah state. So your emirate will not qualify as a Khilafah state. We spoke about the role of the Quran and truth. We spoke about the substance of the Khilafah state and the form, differing because of Sharia, but the substance is the Quran. And if you don't have even the methodology for study the Quran, how can you derive from the Quran that which should explain the reality of the world today? And the Darul Ulum has failed. We spoke about the last shower of rain. And we say, while the last shower of military rain is coming from there, the last shower of scholarly rain is not coming from there. It's coming from here, from the young ones in Pakistan. And so Afghanistan will have to learn. Afghanistan will have to humble itself and seek knowledge. And if you do not seek knowledge, if you remain with the arrogance of the Darul Ulum, that we have all the knowledge, we don't need to learn from you, then the warning was, this is not 25 years ago. Today everybody have a smartphone we can take photographs. And every single mistake that you make, once your emirate is established, will be broadcast all over the world, and you will become the laughing stock of all of mankind. And I proceeded to show where you're going to have your great trials, namely, number one, your conception of an international order, but more importantly, your economy. And finally, your fidelity to the Sunnah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And in this respect, I mentioned many things about women, that this is Islam and you don't have Islam. We pray that Allah might guide our brothers. I've made no comments on Taliban. I've never mentioned the name Taliban. So don't send me any emails directing me attention, this, that, and the other. The micro-analysis of what is happening in Afghanistan is not my business. I am not a scholar of that. You have scholars in Pakistan who are capable of doing that better than me. I am not the scholar of micro-analysis of what is happening in Pakistan. It's not my business. I'm dealing with macro-analysis, and I'm speaking only in the context of Islam. May Allah grant that Afghanistan may get the knowledge with which to be able to restore a Khilafah state. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين.